Jasper?
Yes?
What do you know about your cousin Alex?
Well, I know he ain't in Tupelo, Mississippi anymore.
Did he get? How did he get out? What was law enforcement?
The aliens took him. You know, and I'm not talking about the ones south of the border. I'm talking about those other ones. You know, the tall, skinny, blue ones. You know, they kind of look like a blue tuna, except without the tuna.
Do those aliens really exist? I think that's just a fairy tale that the left-wing media's been pushing on us for years.
Well, you know, it's true that anything's possible.
But the more you drink, the more aliens you'll see.
I have a feeling, Jasper, that this is going straight up to YouTube this evening. You want to drink to that?
Here you go. Here's to Earth. Here's to all of us on the front lines, the back line, and who don't even know we're in line. Well, I photographed much better in the dark, you know. I photograph much better in the dark.
All right. You got the giggles? Well, here, I got a couple questions for Mr. Collier here.
Okay, we're getting serious now?
We are.
Okay.
So, Alex, you know, it dawned on me that 14 years ago, Easter weekend 1995, that we last got together and did an interview of any kind. So,
I had no idea it was the same weekend.
Yeah, Easter weekend.
Wow.
14 years later.
An interesting coincidence.
Yeah, it is.
Well, it's a pleasure. Sorry it took 14 years to do it again.
I'm glad we're getting the chance today. Hey, so, you know, in the last few years, there's been an awful lot going on in the United States, and I think a lot of people have changed their view of what the United States is really all about. I think they've come to realize that some of the things that we've been doing, that we've allowed our government officials to do, haven't really been in our best interests. Well, tell me about your perception about the direction the United States is headed.
Well, you know, the country is always a reflection of its people. And it is my opinion that, yes, we have a governmental bureaucracy that claims to love America, but clearly by its actions and the laws and the way it's beginning to attack the citizenry, it hates Americans. But really, who's to blame for that? I mean, it's very easy to blame the government, but the government essentially is just our voted representatives. I mean, there is a bureaucracy around that government that manages and does the day-to-day grunt work, but essentially, you know, it's the Congress and the Senate and the executive branch, who we vote for, who we've put into office. Now, I've said this, back in the early 90s, 92, 93, 94, I was saying a lot of this was coming. And you know, really, who do we have to blame? And quite frankly, Rick, we have ourselves to blame. It's the citizens' fault. We abdicated management of the government to a group of politicians who are allowed to take campaign contributions from private industry, from corporations, from the military-industrial complex to do their bidding. We got on with our lives, I guess, mistakenly trusting that our representatives, when they took the oath of office, actually meant it. Obviously, they didn't. Because now what we have is a horrible situation. We have a government that isn't in any way, shape, or form a representative of the Constitution or even the Bill of Rights. In fact, those two documents barely exist at all. The government isn't acting like they exist, and they're going to continue to do what they want to do or what their bidding is, what they're being told to do. So let me put it to you that way, what they're being told to do. So, you know, it's the people. We screwed up. We didn't manage the government. We didn't pay attention to what they were doing. As long as there was food on the shelves, as long as gas was cheap, as long as everybody was working, nobody cared. But guess what? Reality's hit home now. Now we have a government spending our dollar into absolute oblivion. We also have the devaluation of the dollar. You know, the chickens are coming home to roost, and now everybody's beginning to wake up and saying, oh my God, what the hell have these guys been doing? And, you know, now we know. You know, it's out there, and it's at a point where they're not even bothering to hide it anymore. So, you know, what the question really comes down to is this. America is changing dramatically, and it's changing very, very fast. And it really comes down to a very simple premise, in my perspective. Do you want freedom and liberty, or do you want socialism? Now, there are some dramatic differences between the two. One requires self-responsibility and self-government. The other is you become a natural resource of the state, and they will tell you what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. And if for any reason at any time they decide they no longer need you, as Henry Kissinger so aptly put it, then we all become useless eaters. So this is where it's at. There is no really middle road as I see it. I think everybody waiting for one man to do something, for example, President Obama, to change the company, to change the government, to change the world, is ridiculous. He is just one guy, and you know, the governments of the world are not run by offices, they're run by corporations. They're run by corporations, and those corporations are run by a program. And that program essentially has control of everything. It controls the money, it controls the technology, it controls the governments, it controls the media. And some of the personages within that program are not us. They're extraterrestrial. And I know many people will say, oh, that can't be, it never happened. Well, it doesn't matter at this point what they think. What is what is. And that's where we are. And now it's all coming to the forefront. And the next couple of years are going to be just the most interesting and the most full of growth opportunities for people. Dark night of the souls for many people. And an opportunity to not only change the way we live, but also the way to change our perspectives on how we want to live. And, you know, really think about what really is important. You know, is it the money? Is it the dollar? Is it the big car? Is it the $1 million home? It isn't any of that. It's our family and it's our friends. We don't need all this crap. We just don't. We don't need all this crap. We just don't. You know, what's important is who we are. Where are we going with ourselves? Have people looked inside themselves and said, you know, I do all this work, I support these other things and all these other people. Am I actually fulfilling what I want to do? Am I, in fact, following my passion? Am I truly happy with my effort and what I've done? You know, have I made any difference whatsoever in what's going on here in the world? Now, if you can be a clerk in a 7-Eleven and say, yeah, this is my life's fulfillment, well, bully for you. Great. But I know that in actuality that's far and few in between. People really need to start evaluating and get extremely creative and figure out what is it that they can do to fulfill themselves, to fulfill their dreams, to at least know what those dreams are and start going after it. You know, folks, it isn't about the extraterrestrials, though that's important because it'll give us a different perspective of who we are. Ultimately, when you come right down to it, the question that has to be asked is, who am I? What is it that I want? What is it that I'm creating? What is it that I want to create? You know, how much am I actually valued by myself, my family? Am I loved? Am I respected? Am I following my heart's desire? Am I spiritually evolving? Or am I just on this automatic treadmill that the media and the earth's religions have put us on? You know, you feel good on Sunday, but by Wednesday it's just like, it's all worn off. And that's because it's not genuine. It's not genuine depth. It's not genuine happiness. Okay, it's instant salvation. And that doesn't work, you know. And it's not that anybody actually needs salvation. They just need to love themselves. And in finding that, and in truly embracing that love, that passion for themselves, and honoring themselves, you'd be amazed at how much crap that's in your life will just fall away. Because, you know, what isn't real will just fall away when you're actually on your path. You know, and I can't tell people what their path is. I'm still working on my path. But it's all about self-responsibility. And that isn't going to change. That's where the real growth, that's where the real evolution comes from. In America, we had that opportunity, and we did it for some time. But for the last 50 years, God, it's just gone downhill. I mean, we've had this incredible opportunity to change the world, you know, and now the world's very upset with us. And
let's take a look at that for a second. Okay, Alex, you've mentioned that Eisenhower lost control of the U.S. government and that it really has never been regained by the U.S. people. And I think we all want to know, how did that happen?
Well, that's not exactly what I said. He didn't lose control of the government, but he lost control of the technology. Apparently, you know, and this information's out there. Brigadier General Lufkin said in the Disclosure Project testimony, that's disclosureproject.org, which I recommend to everybody. You know, he mentioned that the technology was being reverse engineered, but it went black. And it went black very, very quickly. And it was really literally a matter of weeks that he lost control of where the technology was because it went black. And a lot of that had to do with deniability for not only the executive branch, but the government as a whole. Now, who's actually managing this? And this is where I think a lot of people are confused. A lot of people think that the government has this technology. The government doesn't have this technology. We paid for it, but programs have this technology. A lot of this technology was reverse engineered by programs created by contractors, government contractors who have this technology, and then a program was built above all of this, probably with the help of the NSA, because to this day nobody's ever read their charter, so we don't know exactly what they're mandated to do other than snoop on everybody, okay? That's where this technology is. It isn't that the government has it. It isn't that Obama can get his hands on it and say, okay, I'm taking it and I'm giving it to the people. It isn't like that at all. If you remember, Jimmy Carter tried to find out about extraterrestrials, and it was George Bush Sr., who was then director of the CIA, told him, sorry, Mr. President, your classification, your clearance isn't high enough. This is documented. So he couldn't find out anything. Bill Clinton did exactly the same thing. He tried to find out, but he was given limited information because he didn't have the clearance. Well, who can give the president clearance for this? Right? Who authorizes clearance to the president to know about this stuff? Well, if he doesn't know about it, then who does? Who's managing the information if the president of the United States doesn't have access to it? Clearly, there's your secret government. Those who are managing these programs. Because they have this technology that's thousands of years in advance of what we're using commercially. We have no access to it. Our elected officials have no access to it. The government has no access to it. Okay, but these programs exist nonetheless, and we are paying for this. Okay, the taxpayers. But we're not deriving any of the benefit of it. That is your secret government. Everything else is smoke and mirrors. Okay, what's coming down the pipe now is the fact that they have this technology and they're basically making choices. They're deciding what kind of society, what kind of world we're going to live in, Who stays, who goes, what areas go through war, what areas stay in peace, which natural resources are going to be taken over. All of this is being managed by the program. And let's take a jump back to John F. Kennedy. This is not something I've ever said publicly, but if you recall, one of the things that John Kennedy did, one of the first acts he did, was to abolish the Special Operations Coordinating Group within the National Security Council. The reason for that, I believe, or I should say I have been told, is that Eisenhower told him that that is the issue, that is the area where he lost control. So John Kennedy disbanded it. What's interesting is after he was assassinated, Johnson reinstalled that group. Now who is this group? Who is the special group? Nobody knows. Nobody really knows who they are. Administrations come and go, but rumor has it they stay. They stay and they manage all the data, all the information, everything. For example, also during Kennedy's administration, he signed an executive order in June, 11110, I believe it was, executive order, authorizing the United States Treasury to print interest-free money. Started with 5s and 10s. That executive order, in fact, is still on the Federal Register and it has never been repealed, but we don't do anything about it. The government doesn't do anything about it, and the Treasury isn't doing anything about it. Who is doing it? The Federal Reserve. And the reason you won't ever find the Federal Reserve being audited, or they won't allow you to audit it, is because they have created trillions of dollars to fund the secret space program that McKenna, this kid over in England, found out about. That's the deal. That's the reality of the situation. You know, and you can go pound your head on a wall, you can do whatever, but that's it. That is where our secret government is. It is there, it is real, and it's managing everything at this point. And they really don't give a damn what the people think. They really don't. They have their own agenda. And they're doing their own thing. We don't need the space shuttle. We haven't needed it forever. There are many people out there talking about special spacecraft, Tango Romeo 3 Bravos, Tango Romeo 3 Alphas, etc., etc. These are all very real spacecraft. They in fact do exist, and they do have some solar system travel. We are so far along, it's amazing. And in one sense, we can be proud of that, but in the other sense, where is the technology? Why isn't that we are still being strangled by oil companies? It's ridiculous, because they fear an economic collapse. Well, we've printed the dollar into oblivion. The economic collapse is coming anyway. So why don't we just release the free energy and the technology that they have, you know, to power homes, to power cities. Let's just do it, because they're destroying the economy of the government, of the country anyway, by printing the dollar into oblivion. And that is going to happen. You know, you just can't fix debt by creating more debt. Who ever heard of that? And then if you look at the history of economics, there is not a single fiat currency that has lasted more than 64 years. Ours is the only exception, but here we are. You know, here we are. We are about to hit the wall next 18 months. So, again, it comes back to the American people. Ladies and gentlemen, what do you want? What kind of a country do you want? Half of you don't even vote. You don't even register to vote. So, literally, you folks have taken yourself out of the game completely. Your attitude is, it doesn't count, it doesn't matter. Well, you know what? You're right. It doesn't matter because enough of you aren't participating to make the change. We have still the ability to make a dramatic change in this country and to change the direction. We can go to our state governments and say, okay, you need to withdraw your support for the federal government. You need to hold them accountable to the 10th Amendment. You have to remember that it was the states that created the federal government, not the other way around. Okay? That's what has to happen. We have to remind them who's in charge here. The citizens created the states created the government. Okay? It was a government of the people, by the people, for the people. Not for the government, not for private industry, not for the military-industrial complex. That was not it. That is nowhere in the Constitution, or the Bill of Rights, or the Declaration of Independence. None of that is in there. Okay? It was about us. And if we don't reclaim it back, we are going to lose the country. We're virtually there. In many intents and purposes, we have absolutely lost portions of our country. Who knows what's really going on? It's an absolute travesty. But instead of turning on each other, what we need to be doing is we need to unite. We need to come together with a very common, focused purpose, not rioting, not killing. None of that has to happen at all. It's a question of just restating to our state governments, we want change. We want you to rein in this government. And whatever it takes to do that, you do it. And if all the 50 states got together, we could make this thing change right away. But that's what happens. Remember, the people created the state, and it was the states that created the federal government. It is not the other way around.
I want to know what involvement ETs played in Eisenhower losing control of the military-industrial complex.
I don't know that they had any control at all, or they intervened in any way. They wouldn't necessarily have to. You have to understand that this was something. If you look at the times where we lived, we had just finished World War II. We had the Korean War had just ended, and there was all this hype about the Soviets, the Soviets, the Soviets. So you had all these secrets, all this clandestine activity going on, and now, here you have several crashes of Roswell, Socorro, probably some others that have occurred, and here we had all this technology. There had been the 54 meeting at what is now called Edwards, so there were a lot of things going on. I don't know what all the actual mechanics were for how it just went black, but it went black. And probably whatever mechanism was in place that could classify these projects, or whatever group, let's hypothetically say Special Operations Coordinating Group within the National Security Council, all right? Let's say that they had the authority to classify these projects, these programs. Well, they classified it above and beyond anything that the President could ever reach. Right then and there, he would lose it. And that's how it works. Is it a good system? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Are there some things that maybe we should have been told about it? Absolutely yes. Are there some things that maybe we shouldn't have been told? I'm absolutely open to the idea that there were, especially from what I've learned from the A's, that there were some things maybe people weren't ready for then. I think we're probably ready now for a lot more information, but now they don't want to give us any information. I mean, now we're getting more information outside the United States about what's going on than anywhere else. Even other governments are very, very open. And here we are, the center of this entire thing, and we're like being led down this dark hallway, or how did Leonard Stringfield put it? A hall of mirrors with a floor of quicksand. That's exactly what it's like. That's a perfect analogy for this fiasco that's going on. Here we are, reverse engineered this technology. Here the American people have paid for it, and we know less than anybody else about what's actually going on with it. It's just, this isn't going to serve anybody. And if you're in a poker game and you don't know who the patsy is, that's probably you. And that's exactly what's happening here. We're in a poker game, and we're the patsy. And that's what I know about it.
Now, earlier you mentioned the program. Is that something that elected officials created, or is that something way above the elected officials, above the entrenched military officials? What is the program? It's kind of vague, just calling something the program. Be as specific as you can to explain what you mean by the program.
Well, it doesn't operate like a government. It operates like an agenda. Now, exactly what that agenda is, I can't honestly say. But let's just take a look at where we're at. We know this technology exists. We have people coming forward. Again, I'll make reference to the Disclosure Project and other civilian as well as military people coming forward. Even other extraterrestrial groups who have been making contact with citizens of Earth in other countries have been given information regarding the fact that there has been the reverse engineer of technology. The Germans were doing it, the Nazi Germans were doing it, the Russians have been doing it, the United States government has been doing it, but we don't hear anything about it. Okay? It's a program, and this program is essentially above civilian everyday life. You have Corso's book, you have the work of Colonel Wendell Stevens, and all of the research that he's done regarding this, and many, many other authors that are trying, every day to put out more and more information and just, banging on the door, pounding the walls to try to get people to understand what's been going on here. And they deserve a wealth of credit for their tenacity and for continuing to do this work and to get it out, like yourself as a researcher, putting this information out, usually out of your own pocket. So many people have made so many sacrifices. They've lost relationships. Marriages have ended because of this focus on trying to bring humanity up to speed on what's going on with the program. So when we talk about the program is so far removed from everyday life on Earth that most people wouldn't even think it would exist. It could also be that the program really doesn't know anything about how we're existing at this point because they're so removed from everyday life. They're tucked away in very secret places. They're in underground facilities. They're tucked away inside mountains. They don't have intercourse or exchange with everyday citizens in a very normal way anymore. They're secluded. They're sequestered. They hang out amongst themselves. They're detached from everyday humanity. So it's almost like you have two complete different realities here, operating within the same space, which in fact is true. So, what is the program? I can't honestly tell you, Rick, what the agenda of the program is. But there's evidence that the program does in fact do things that not only protect America, but have also intervened. For an example, several weeks ago, there was an incident along the East Coast where many people along the East Coast, the eastern seaboard, saw a green flash of material flying through the sky and landing in the ocean. The backside on that is that a cargo ship somewhere in the Atlantic launched a missile. The backside on that is that a cargo ship somewhere in the Atlantic launched a missile to take out Norfolk, Virginia, and that it was a TR-3B that took out the missile. If that's true, and I give that a very high probability, I'm okay with that. I'm really okay with that. But if you have technology that sophisticated, why are we spending billions of dollars on all this stuff that we don't need? Why don't we put that money back into helping small businesses and build the economy? Why aren't we taking that money to pay off mortgages? Okay, we have, 17, 18 million homes that are empty now in this country. Why aren't we doing something to put homeless people in them? I mean, there's a million things to do. I mean, here we give Wall Street, $10 trillion, and less than 2% of that is actually being loaned back to the citizenry? Enough of that. That isn't going to work. That's not going to work. And that's not what this is supposed to be about anyway. Okay, this is a government of the people, by the people, for the people. Not for the bankers, about the bankers, and only for the bankers. No, that's not what this is about. And it never should be about that. Okay? There has to be a paradigm shift here. But it's got to come from the people. All right? Instead of whining and complaining, take it back. Take back control. If you don't like what the government's doing, then you get involved, you vote, you register to vote, you do whatever you have to do. If you can't make a change in Washington, then you make a change in the local government. We have to do something, all right? Because we're out of time. We are literally out of time. And the program needs to somehow be brought back into reality. And I don't know the mechanisms. I don't know how we're going to bridge that, all right? But someone knows. Someone who's involved knows how to bridge those realities back into ours. How to take this technology 1,000 years advanced and bring it into the world today to not only help the environment, but to make us all free. Who the hell wants to live as a slave? Nobody does. No one does in the world. Every citizen wants freedom. Every citizen wants their children to grow up free. You know, my children, your children, the people listening to their children, at this point, their children will never know the civil liberties we know. That's a tragedy. That's a tragedy. And it doesn't matter who dropped the ball or where we dropped the ball. The fact of the matter is the ball has been dropped. And we have to do right now, we have to take it back. Okay, so the program, I don't exactly know how to answer that. I've given you the best information that I have. It's complicated. It is just so complicated, you know.
Let me ask you, within the last year, you've spoken again with the Andromedans after 5 or 6 years of deciding that you didn't want to be involved for a while, that you needed to focus on your own life, and you had other issues that kept you from wanting to be involved and be the public spokesperson and the messenger for the Andromedans. But in the last year, you've been able to speak again with them. Have they had any input for you that's helped you understand how we might find our way out of this?
Well, the contact that occurred was really about re-engaging. It was about getting to know. It was about creating a bridge again. It's important to understand that I chose to take the break. And there were a lot of things going on in my life, but it became very difficult to walk the two worlds, number one. But number two, I had to do some searching. I had some maturing and some spiritual growth to go through. I had my own dark night of the soul, for the lack of a better word. All right? And I needed to go through those things in order to get to a place where I could create a new life for myself, a better life for myself, be more secure with who I am and what my place is in the world. And it was important for me to refocus on my family. That always has to be my priority. And it is my priority. The information that they've given us in the past, they've pretty much spelled it out. It's about taking responsibility. It's about advanced maturity. It's about taking time to get really quiet for one to hear their own frequency and to just engage with themselves, connect to their soul. You know, it's about not seeing yourself as a physicality, but it's about seeing yourself as a physicality, as a spiritual soul, as a totality, not just flesh and blood. You know, we're not some mistake. We're not some pool of chemicals that magically turned into this. That's not it at all. There is a grander scheme here. There is a definite divine purpose for everyone that's here and other worlds. But it's up to us individually to want to know what that is, to search that out. And that's what it is. And you know what? You can't ignore it, because it's all the systems that we've created on ego that aren't real, they're all going to collapse because they're not going to survive, because they're not real. What is real? Okay? When you talk about creating a reality that is sustainable, is it about the natural resources? You know what? If the military-industrial complex, if the governments of the world were truly honest, we could change things within a year. We wouldn't be taking any more natural resources from the earth. We have enough already. It isn't about the population. It's about the fact that they can't control everybody. They're just spinning it. That's all it is. They're just spinning it because they're incompetent, because they're not capable of doing it, because this is not the agenda. This is not what it's about. Earth was not meant to be a prison, and we were not meant to be slaves on our own home. That isn't going to work. Okay? But at the same time, we have to step up as people, as fathers, as brothers, as sisters, as husbands, as wives. We have to step up. As citizens, we have to step up and take responsibility. And we have to be really clear about what our priorities are, and about what's right. I have a great respect for anybody who's in the armed forces, but it's important to note, especially to the young people, when you became the soldier, you did not surrender the citizen. You are still a citizen. And when you finish your tour and you get out of the service, guess what? You're a citizen again. So whatever rights you took away from people, guess what? When you become a citizen, you've lost those rights too. Okay? It's important to remember that. What are you doing when you take an order? Is it good? Is it the right thing to do? Because it will come back to haunt you. And we can't turn on each other. That is not what this is about. This is about standing tall and standing together and making sure that we move with a common purpose. It's not about creating a civil war. We don't need any of that. Okay, people will want to do that because they're so angry. They want to just lash out in furious and anger. Take that constructive energy, take that anger, and do something really positive with it. You don't have to destroy. That's only going to create more polarity and make things 100 times worse. And it only takes the healing that much longer. We're out of time. We've got massive changes coming on a consciousness and on a physical level to the earth and to ourselves. We've got to stop. We've got to stop playing this game. We just have to stop playing this game. It's crazy. It's crazy making. I need a break.
All right, just as a reminder, we're doing this filming in a family setting, so there might be some ambient background family noises.
That's right.
How will the movement of our solar system through the galactic plane affect our solar system and Earth and us here on Earth?
Well, I wasn't alive the last time that actually happened, but here's what I've been told. One of the biggest concerns is that it has a very, very strong gravitational field. It also has a magnetic field. It's also an area, because of its magnetic field, where there's a considerable amount of debris. And as our solar system and everything in the galaxy revolves around it, okay, while we're also going around in the circle, it is not an actual complete elliptical circle. We move in a downward and an upward thrust, which takes approximately, from what I understand, 12,600 years, where things go up and then they come back down. It is the crossing the galactic plane that the A's, Morine and Visayas, were specifically really worried about Earth, in the fact that it was their opinion, based on their own science, that when the Earth hits the galactic plane, the Earth itself would bounce off that gravitational field, causing a great deal of Earth changes, where every coastline on the Earth, on the planet, would be changed from the bouncing before we were able to move through. That's my understanding. I don't know if it's going to cause a physical pole shift or not. That is always a possibility. We do know from the geological record that that's happened. I don't know that that's going to occur this time. However, they were greatly concerned again, and I want to reiterate this, that every coastline on the planet would be changed. So, take that for what it's worth.
Now, you've said that there are an enormous amount of benevolent ETs helping us. What are the primary actions they're taking to help Earth humanity, and will their actions be enough?
I can't say that I know specifically and exactly what every intervention has been. I do know that there have been. And will it be enough? I don't know, Rick. I would assume that they're making an investment here of their time and their energy to help us get through these dramatic stages, to get through these challenges, these moments of growth that we obviously have to go through, because here they are right in front of us. So we can just hope and have faith.
For people who are afraid that they won't survive during any Earth changes, what spiritual or philosophical view have the Andromedans shared with you that you think may help people to overcome their fears?
If you go to Defending Sacred Ground, there's a lot of knowledge that they've imparted. One of the essays in regards to fear is one. The other essay, the isness, worshiping the isness, a relationship to the isness. There's an awful lot of wisdom that they have imparted, but you know, they've always called this time coming the moment of advanced maturity. So I don't necessarily know how to answer that question. I know that I'm not going to be living on the coastline. You know, I'm going to be moving to the Rocky Mountains, to areas along the Colorado Plateau. That's where I'm going to be, at least here in North America. So everybody, you know, people have to listen to themselves. They have to get their own guidance. You know, this isn't about, you know, saviors. This is about everybody becoming their own Christed being and figuring it out and listening and tuning in and figuring out, you know, what they're supposed to do, where they're supposed to be. You know, that's the purpose of maturity, is to get to that place. You know, for example, Rick, we can go back to the question that I asked many, many years ago, what was going to happen to us? You know, and the response was to become totally self-confident and free, to unconditionally be responsible for oneself without being coerced to accept some higher authority. And that's it. That's the essence of advanced maturity, is getting to that place and just knowing. Just knowing. You know, and I'm not here to teach people that. You know, that's I never would have signed up for that. You know, not the way, you know, the Earth civilization has treated its, you know, those kind of teachers. They've been ruthless with them. I never would have volunteered for something like that.
In terms of survival, though, we talked a little last evening about it, and you said survival is a false premise. What did you mean by that? In a spiritual sense.
In a spiritual sense, well, the physicality is just a moment. You know, you're here, the only reason you experience physicality is to learn lessons, to gather knowledge, to experience all kinds of things, from spiritual, emotional, mental, physical, to gather data to educate your soul. You know, I know a lot of people have a very difficult time with the concept of reincarnation, but I have absolutely no doubt that that is the way that it is. You know, that we don't die when our physical body stops working. You know, we move on. We go somewhere else, and many of us come back, and we live again, and we learn different lessons and create different scenarios to provide us with the lessons of knowledge that we want in order to educate our soul. This isn't new knowledge. I mean, people long before, for thousands of years, have been talking about this. And the reason I believe that those kind of teachings have persisted is because they're right. And it doesn't make sense to me. It would never make sense to me if I were the creator of all to give people, souls, one lifetime, 70 some odd years, on this planet to figure it all out, to get it right. That'd be impossible. You know, it would absolutely be impossible to do. You know, especially when it's as screwed up and twisted as it is.
So,
you know.
So to kill in order to survive doesn't make sense in terms of...
No, it doesn't make sense, because you know, the whole idea of advanced maturity, moving into spiritual advanced maturity, is to learn how to create love. Because that's the ultimate lesson here, is you create love, you leave a legacy of love. Nothing else is real. It just doesn't stick. It doesn't... I mean, it seems real because you have so much emotion tied to it, but it isn't real. It doesn't last. The effects of it don't really last. It's a difficult thing to explain, and I wasn't actually prepared for the question.
That's all right.
So you slipped that in there. But that's about all I can say on it at the moment.
Alex, what did you mean when you talk about our human DNA unlocking?
My understanding from the A's is that certain cosmic events were going to occur and or could be manipulated by benevolent extraterrestrials, where they apparently have some technology that would allow cellular memory to release within our body. And somehow that would create a reaction of total physical remembrance, not only for the body, but also for the mind and for the soul. Now you see, when the soul attaches itself to the body before birth, it attaches to the central nervous system. All right? Now that is where apparently we have, well, that's the soul's connection to the body. That's where it connects. We have all kinds of cellular memory within our body. Our DNA, it passes from generation to generation to generation to generation. Now, our subconscious mind knows a lot of this, but our conscious mind doesn't. And then there's a lot that's in there that neither can recognize, so basically it's dismissed. But the body has memory. The cells have memory, which they call cellular memory. And apparently the body knows how to heal itself, can heal itself. It can create physical changes on its own if it's just allowed to or given a command to do so. And my understanding is that we are coming to that point where things like that are going to begin to happen. We already know that there are children being born in the world today that have 3 strands of DNA, some even more. Has there been tampering? Has there been intervention? In some cases I would have to say probably yes, but in other cases I would say no. It's the body beginning to overcome all of its limitations because of a desire to continue to thrive. The body will make adjustments, which is why so many different races are so interested in us, because our bodies are incredibly adaptable to environments and changes, regardless of the fact that we've been manipulated. We're very strong, you know, and our desire to continue to live is very, very strong. And that's not simply just will, you know, that's also the body wanting to continue. So that's what I have to say about that.
All right. Alex, I got a tough question for you. How do you answer skeptics who cite a number of predictions that you've made in the past about future events that have failed to come to pass when you suggested they would?
Well, first, Rick, I'm glad a lot of them didn't happen, quite frankly. I think we would be in a very different world than we are today. Number 2, many of those possible events, when they were presented to me, were presented as possibilities, or a very strong probability. In my immaturity, when lecturing and putting this information out in the 90s, you know, I was running a lot of fear. I was being harassed by governmental agencies. I was being followed. My phones were tapped. There were a lot of things going on. I was losing jobs left and right because I was putting out this type of information. There were a lot of things going on in my life at the time. You know, I'm the only one who could take responsibility for that. If I had to do one thing over, I would have taken those possibilities and I would have presented them more, or try to present them more in a positive light and say, this is a possibility. This is a probability that they said could occur here and here and here. Now, I know several of the events did not occur because of intervention. I know that. And intervention is still occurring, okay? And I'm thrilled that they didn't happen. For the others, I don't know. I don't know if it was consciousness. I don't know if people being aware of the possibility of the events and they prayed, they saw a different outcome. I simply don't have that answer. I don't know. But of course it's something that you have to look at, and the criticism is justifiable. You know?
Is there one example you can give me of where an intervention occurred that changed one of those events that you...
Nuclear weapons detonation. There's been lots of intervention that has occurred, and I can tell you, as of 4 weeks ago, there was still intervention going on in that regard. And that's a fact.
Thank God for it. Now, is it wise for anyone to try to predict future events? Would you do it again, or would you advise anybody else who's in contact with ETs to predict future events, or is that something that you consider unwise at this point?
You know, I'm still growing. I'm still learning. I'm still maturing, I hope. As far as wise, what it tells us is that the future is never set, which means to me we can create anything that we want as long as we all, or a majority of us, have a very focused intent. That's what that tells me. And I'm extremely encouraged by that if we can get enough people together to decide on what kind of a future, what kind of a life and planet we want. I mean, this is clearly, you know, the law of attraction at work here. The future's not set. It could also be that maybe these things coming up in 2012 with the bouncing off the galactic plane, maybe if enough of us get really focused and we surround the Earth with enough love and energy, that nothing will happen. You know, I don't have those answers. I just don't. You know, everybody thinks, God, you've been talking to extraterrestrials for 35, 38 years. You know, you've got all this knowledge. That's true, but you know, I have just as many questions as well. You know, some of the conversations we've had have been extremely one-sided, where I'm shared information and I'm not able to ask enough questions. So,
you're just human.
Yes, more so than ever. More so than ever.
There's a episode in George Washington's life that has a lot of meaning to you. The third trial of George Washington, his vision at Valley Forge. Why is that so important to you?
Well, when I was a little boy, I always had a thing for George Washington. My dad took us to Mount Vernon, and I just loved it. And I can remember sitting in his backyard, looking down the Potomac. And you know how you just know you've been there before? You know, I'd been there before, and I was extremely moved by that. And it's hard to put into words. Well, when I started talking to the A's, Morine and Faceas were very adamant about me studying that and looking up that prophecy. And I've asked, and they just said, well, it could be very, very important in America's future, especially the direction that it's moving now, that this could be a probability. So I studied it because they know that I have a passion for the founding of the United States and the principle, especially the principles for which it was founded on. A constitutional republic, a Bill of Rights, because those documents and America literally created a new domain of knowing that wasn't here in the world before. Before it was always aristocrats and monarchies that ruled the world, and governments. And America changed that now forever. So I saw that, and I recognized that as a little boy as an amazing turning point. And the more I learned from the A's, the more I realized how important that actually was for humanity, to actually have the opportunity of self-government. Unfortunately, there's been a tremendous amount of negative intervention, and they know us probably better than we know ourselves, and they've been able to lull us back into sleep, lull us back into consumerism, into forgetfulness by dumbing down everybody through our school systems. And now they don't even really teach any of that. So they felt very importantly to let me know about that. And if you look at the third trial, it's a remarkable event. I certainly hope it doesn't happen. I don't want it to happen. But I just shared that with you because I thought it was important that, that they would not only come this way, but they would be adamant that I research that and I look into it. So that's why I shared it with you. I mean, it was something that was shared, I think, in 1834 or 1838, and talked about the founding of the United States, talked about the Civil War, and then the third trial. And what's interesting is, these are events that have occurred, that did occur after that. It also, if you look at the third trial, it's very close to where the world is today.
And what is the essence of that third trial?
That essentially the world becomes polarized against the United States and comes after the United States. And if you look at the actions of our government and our banking system today, you can absolutely see some parallels. And the fact that, our government is gearing up for a third world war, that there are people in the administration presently who really would love to isolate Russia in world politics